Hallo Bauexperten! Ich freue mich wirklich, heute hier zu sein. Es ist wieder mal Zeit, um etwas Großartiges zu erschaffen. Bereit? Los! By show of hands, how many of you have been to Germany? No one? All right, think of pictures. Think of what Germany looks like. Do you ever recall seeing an asphalt shingle on a roof there? No? Do you ever remember seeing an air conditioner there at all? No? Well, Germans are a very efficient people, and they tend to see products like heat tape and air conditioners as larger symptoms of a major problem. So they don't use them very often at all. I'm not picking on my talented HVAC friends or anybody else for that matter. My goal today is to shine a light on new ways you can capitalize on your specific zone of genius. I will be challenging some conventions, but by virtue of the fact you are here in this room today, I surmise that we're already like-minded, so we're good to go there. But I will offer some different perspectives that you can share with your customers and your clients that will help expand their vision, which will in turn help you build your business and achieve your objectives, all the while elevating the better building movement. The best way that I can show you this is through the example of my own trades experience. The history of trades in Germany and in Europe is a huge subject. So I'm going to distill everything down to a narrow scope with small stories in a chronological order, all knit together with some interesting information that will culminate into how the German building traditions have presented themselves today, and what opportunities that also presents for you. Every good story starts like this. Once upon a time, in an enchanted land far, far away, full of castles and cathedrals and some of the world's most beautiful works of architectural art, there was a reason this was so. In 100 BC, about the time of Julius Caesar, Romans were developing a revolutionary plumbing system throughout the land. The material they chose to build this in, they called plumbum. We see it represented on the periodic table as Pb. What is this element? I don't know. Lead. Why did they, and plumbum, by the way, is where we get our term for plumber. Why did they use lead? Well, it was easy to mine, super malleable. You could do all kinds of things with it, and they did. They used it for everything. So as the years go on and building technology improves, buildings start to get bigger. Buildings start to get taller. And so now accessibility becomes a big issue because you can no longer just send somebody up to the 300 feet up in the air anytime something breaks. So this is what I believe something like this must have happened. An enterprising plumber saw a really sad roofer and said, "Let me help you out." So they went back to their shop, hammered out a bunch of lead, turned it into sheet metal, gave it to the roofer. They went up there and they installed it. And some version of that story is true because that is how our trade was born. We are masters of sheet metal application to the building envelope and everything that goes along with it. Okay, fast forward to the 15th century. Picture this. You are a medieval craftsperson. Your trade has been honed and perfected over the centuries, and you are good at your job. You've just finished a big project for which you've been paid handsomely, and it's a good day because you just found out that you've got commissions in 4 neighboring towns. So you put the coins in your pouch, you put the tools in your back, and you hop off merrily down the road to the next town to do your job. But what you don't know is that it's not just a road today. It's a game trail, and you are the prey. You head to the deepest, darkest part of the forest. No turning back now. And you hear rustle in the bushes. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a band of highwaymen come out and attack you from all sides. They had been lying in wait. They knew you would come. They leave you beaten and bereft on the side of the road. Well, this scenario doesn't play out well for anybody, unless you're a bad guy. So it didn't take long for trades to develop more robust coalitions. And now, anytime you go from town to town, you have your very own bodyguard. And they've set up way stations, and they've set up safe houses. These guilds operated in a structured hierarchy with the apprentice at the base. We get the word apprentice from apprehend, meaning they are bringing in new knowledge. So their knowledge increases, their proficiency increases, they become more autonomous, and they go out into the wide world as journeymen. Journeymen are kept in check because of the way the hierarchy is structured. They have incentives to grow, and they don't want to do anything that could possibly reflect poorly on their master, because that in turn reflects poorly on the guild. And the guilds at this point have their fingers in every aspect of society. So there would go your entire socioeconomic safety net. You can see how, even from just this tiny little story, this is just one example of thousands of why trade standards remain so high throughout the years. And even today, when you distill things down through all of the centuries, you can see the remnants of this in German culture, because their very identity and moral fabric is tied to this. This is why they put a high priority on work ethic and skill and precision, right? Wandergesellen. Germans like to take small words and make them big. This is just two words, Wander and Gesellen. Gesellen are the journeymen. Wander is a cognate for the English word wander, indicating that there is a journey involved. So why would you go on a journey? Well, imagine that you grew up in a little burg in the sticks somewhere, and everybody thinks the same way. All of the buildings look the same. The weather has been the same ever since you were born. Same. In order to have a more comprehensive understanding of your trade, you're going to want to go out and get a more comprehensive experience. So you go to different people and you train with them and you see the different locations and the different ways of doing things. Do they still do this? Yes. And they rely on the time-honored tradition of getting from place to place by hitchhiking. Depending on what the objectives are on the journey, it could last maybe 3 years or so. And during that time, you are not allowed to go home and see your family. You are not allowed to get any financial compensation for your labor during that period. You're only compensated through lodging and food. And the only things you can take with you are whatever you can fit in the knapsack on your back. That's it. In case you're wondering, all of the Zunftguilds, all of the guild trades in Germany have special uniforms. I wish I had more time to talk to you about that because you would find it very cool, but that's what they're wearing. Okay. This is us in our trade uniform. This is our master. His name is Erno. That is a Meisterbrief, which is what you get when you graduate from master school. Once you finish your journey, you're able to apply for master school, which is a 4-year degree, and it requires residency hours similar to what we ask for our medical students, and it's punctuated by a final exam that comes with a 50% fail rate. So good times. Erno has over 25,000 hours of trade-specific training. By contrast, it takes about 4,500 hours or so to obtain a law degree in the United States. That's quite a bit. Every trade in Germany has a master. So if you're in the restaurant business, Or if you're a window washer, you have a master. And only masters are allowed to train other people. And this is where it gets relevant. I've heard your stories. I know you deal with dumb rules. I know that they affect your time and your bandwidth and your money and your sanity. What if, and hear me out, regulations were actually helpful? Because in Germany, only masters can make the rules. Here's what that might look like, or here's what that does look like as far as our trade is concerned. Our systems, depending on what materials you choose, can last for 1,000 years or more, maintenance-free. How do we know this? Because we've worked on buildings that have lasted that long. The only reason we had to go up there to begin with was because of damage from bullets from World War II or a fallen tree limb. This is the type of permanence you should expect. Now, on the other side of the pond, would you agree that this is a typical windowsill in the US-ish? Kind of this wide, yes? Let me put this down. And when you walk in and outside of a building, it's maybe 6 inches-ish between you and the elements, and a window is flush with the wall, yes? This is what a window looks like on the inside and the outside of a wall in Germany. You have to take 2 giant steps to get in and out, and this is how they build. Oh, and windows are 4 panes minimum, by the way. And this is how they build walls. A standard masonry brick is 30 centimeters, so about a foot. Add an additional 20 centimeters at minimum of insulation on top of that. And I'm not kidding, 2 inches of stucco on top of that. So if this is the downspout, and this is the downspout fastener, we fasten the fasteners into the stucco directly and only, and they last permanently like this forever. Have you ever seen a furnace room in Germany? It is a work of art. Every little detail on every component of a building has to work properly to achieve this kind of result. Benjamin Franklin offers a proverb that illustrates this very well. It goes like this: "A little neglect may breed mischief. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for want of a horse, the rider was lost." Other details offer a slippery slope argument that says, since the rider was lost, the battle was lost, and the kingdom was lost. But dramatic effect aside, the point is, details matter a lot. Have you guys ever been in a really crappy hotel and you hear this drip, drip noise? And you're stuck there and there's nothing you can do about it, and you know you're handy and you know you can fix it, but there's no accessibility, so the only thing you can do is just white knuckle through it. And then finally you're looking for the closest sharp object just so that you can stab something. I've been there. Let me tell you the story of Erno. Remember our Spengler Meister that I told you about? This is the story of his first night here in the United States. So they fly him out here to work on this really complicated technical building. And they put him up in a nice hotel that was about a mile or so away from the freeway. And he's really excited because this is going to be his very first day working in the United States. He's going to get a good night's sleep. His head hits the pillow, and the only thing he can hear is road noise. And it gets louder and louder, and his heart starts beating, and he's absolutely certain that at any given moment, a Mack truck is going to put the pedal to the metal, crash through the wall, and mash him flat. Well, he didn't sleep very well that night. So the next morning, he confides in another German colleague who had been also flown out for this project, who had the benefit of being here for a few months already. And to his horror, this colleague told him, "That's just how Americans build things." Now, if your knee-jerk reaction to this story is, "Ooh, melodrama much?" Just because something seems normal to us doesn't necessarily mean it is normal. Habituation occurs when the brain is subject to repeated stimuli. So there is something sensory that's happening over and over and over again, and given enough time, the brain will choose to either downplay it or disregard that entirely. You see a lot of habituation studies refer to Holocaust survivors. The reason being is because a lot of them will report that after they get over the initial shock of their situation, they start not seeing the things, hearing things, smelling things like they used to anymore. Same thing happens, so you've got a really, really extreme example, horrible example on one end, and something that's just sort of benign on the other with the dripping noise. But regardless, our brain will tune those things out. Now, set your own habituated experience aside for a moment and think about what it might be like for Erno. You're one of the top experts in your field in the world, and you do attain a really high level of building standards, so there's that moral component we were talking about. But just as a person whose lived experience in a building is that if you have somebody go into the next room over for their own private disco party or whatever, and they close the door, that's the last you hear of them. Not the next apartment over, not the next building over, the next room over. Make a little more sense? Here are some habituated viewpoint arguments I'm sure you've heard before, and my response to them. The client won't tolerate the cost. Okay. The average American makes 11.63% more than their German counterpart. Now, there's a lot to factor in, including cost of living, but when you come up with everything together, we always come out ahead. At the heart of this argument, I do not believe is money. There are some things that we can do to change up procedures and messaging, which will go a long way in helping us resolve this concern. Meh, good enough. Does it matter that buildings are built well? Well, I suppose if you get nihilistic enough, nothing matters. And I can't speak for everyone, but if you were to ask the average German of meager financial means how they feel about building standards, they will tell you they can't afford not to have a home built well. Well, that's just how we've always done it around here. Oh. Appeal to tradition fallacy, circular reasoning, failure to justify, ignorance of alternatives. These are fallacies and excuses, not reasons. People stick with the status quo because it's easy. They don't want to put in any effort, but they're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes and leaving a trail of trash in their wake. It's not fair that we don't all get to live in great-great-Oma's beautiful, sustainable house that never breaks. It's not fair that we don't have the same opportunities and educational programs that our German counterparts do, and it's not fair that we have to deal with some dumb rules. But it is what it is. So then the next question becomes, what are we going to do about it? This is an absolutely classical example of the obstacle is the way. There are opportunities for us if we see them. Where would we start? Well, one of the easiest ways to do this would be to go to an expo or a convention overseas to Germany or another country that does have high building standards, and see what the locals are looking at. And I say that because there are really good trade shows, and it's good to go to trade shows here. But our experience has been that they know their audience. And the newest and latest presented at those shows has often been in use in Germany for 50 years or more sometimes. So if you're really interested in having a more progressive viewpoint, that is something that I would recommend. And if that's not in the cards, dollars or time-wise, at least do some research on the companies that are presenting and reach out to them. It's okay that you don't speak the language. Most of them do speak English, and they would be happy to help you. I would also suggest that you subscribe to some international trades publications. You can get hard copies like this, you can get digital copies, and a lot of them do come in English. You're resourceful, you're smart, you can figure things out through context if it's not in English. And look, we're the featured articles in these things. You should find a good master or a company in there and reach out to them. And I do mean that. You should reach out to us. I know that our systems are unique, and a lot of people are afraid to use them because they're different. But we offer consultation services. They're a complete package. We help architects with their tricky details. We actually have educational programs for installers. We train them in our trade. David Thorne is brilliant by putting this group here together because we can much more easily lock arms, get momentum behind our cause, and get louder. A lot of this through networking. Case in point, my friend Frank Lindhorst and longtime collaborator is here. He has developed a revolutionary, and I mean that with the gravitas that term deserves, panelized building system. Did I accurately reflect that? Guys, I was over there just the other day in my high heels, picking up panels, moving them over, super lightweight. I learned how to put it together in the course of the afternoon, and the performance is incredible. We're talking like R27 plus for walls, R64 plus for roofs, earthquake proof, almost, green building. This is one of the easiest ways that you could level up, is just absolutely go and meet with him afterwards. Incredible system. And then also recall that 1% concentrated improved effort per day at the end of the year will net you 37% better. Think about what that could mean to our businesses, to the environment, to the economy, to our country. This area has the winningest parade of homes entries of any place else in the nation. There is something in the water here that makes people want to level up and buck tradition. Wouldn't it be amazing if we were responsible for being the tipping point for bettering building standards in the United States? What if we were the standard bearers? Rachel Naomi Remen has said, leaders are people who don't compromise their values to gain approval, who live up to their own inner sense of things. When you give the culture what it expects, the culture will reward that. But a leader is someone who gives the culture what it needs, not what it expects. A real leader heals the wounds of their culture. I can assure you that permanent maintenance-free solutions do exist, and that by implementing higher building standards, we can improve lives on so many levels while differentiating our businesses and setting us up to be the leaders we were destined to be. Dankeschön.